In this unit, we will learn how to convert our raster images into vectors. You'll very often find yourself sketching by hand and then having the need to turn this sketch into a vector illustration. It's something that seems to be easy, but the automatic way in Adobe Illustrator doesn't always provide you with the best possible outcome. It works well for drafts or if you want to achieve a certain kind of visual outcome. I often use the image trace function in order to turn my sketches into vectors and apply any kind of alterations I want. For the final design though, I prefer to manually trace my sketches and illustration so I can achieve the best possible result. You will see that the image trace function creates very complicated paths, which are hard to further edit. Let me show you how to use this function. The way it works is you just drag and drop any image, any sketch or picture like this one here on Adobe Illustrator. You select it, and then from the properties panel here at the top, you see those two targets. If I click on the edit contents, the properties panel changes, and it gives me more options about the image itself rather than the box where the image is placed. If I'm gonna click image trace, that is gonna turn my image to a vector. As you can see, it did a pretty good job here, but sometimes you won't really be happy with the outcome. So if you want to have further control on how to transform your image to a vector, all you need to do is click on this little icon here, the image trace panel, and it's gonna pop you up this panel which gives you some functions regarding the color, so auto color, high color, low color, grayscale, black and white, and outline. So for example, if I click auto color, it's gonna get me the pre-existing colors after loading. So it's gonna use gray and black, which is most likely what you want to actually do. But it depends on the outcome that you want to create and how you're expecting to use afterwards your illustration. On the preset here, you have few options regarding the way that's gonna trace the image. So one is like high fidelity photo or low fidelity, just 3 colors, 16 shades of gray, black and white, sketched art, silhouettes, line art, and technical drawing. So in this case here, I would say what we have is first of all a black and white logo. So we perhaps go with that, yeah? So we just have white background and black shapes. So yes, that does actually the job. From the view options, it allows you to preview your image in different ways. So what I usually select is the tracing image. I leave it on the default so I can actually see what I'm doing. You can also change the mode from black and white, in this case because we already selected on the preset black and white, to grayscale or color if you want to, which in this case are not really applicable since we want just simple black and white options. Once you're happy with that, you can just go ahead and close this panel. And you will notice that it's still a picture. It's not a vector. I cannot select the cow illustration. I cannot amend it or anything. So what I need to do is go ahead again on my edit contents, and you'll see that we have the option of expand here. And this is gonna help us convert the raster image, the picture that we still have, into vectors. I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. And you see now that I do have some paths, and with my white arrow I can actually go ahead and select them. So I'm gonna grab this picture and move it outside the canvas. And let's say now that I want to get rid of all white shapes. So I'm gonna go ahead and select the background, delete it, select the cow, and so on. Just selecting the shapes, pressing backspace in order to delete them. That seems to be like as a perfect solution, but sometimes it happens that it leaves some white shapes behind the black ones that we can't really see. So what I usually do is use instead the magic wand tool to click on the white shapes and make sure that it selected all of them by once. Now I'm pretty sure that I have the black shape. I still do have this box that it was a clipping mask. I'm gonna go ahead and select it with my white arrow and delete it. And now you can see I clicked on the object and all the object is colored black. So the image trace option needs a bit of like cleaning in a way afterwards in order to get your illustration in a good result. now I'm pretty happy with how I traced it, but the eyes are looking a bit weird, the paths are not that clean, and that is the point that if you go ahead and try to fix your shapes, you will see that it has so many anchor points, especially like those two. Why do we need so close these two anchor points? Illustrator is getting better and better in tracing images, but of course, like if you would go ahead and trace it manually, you would be a bit more precise on your path. So let's go ahead, for example, and select the magenta color. So my path would be really simple. It would be a minimum amount of anchor points instead of having all those ones that Illustrator created instead. So that is the reason why I would suggest, once you trace it, you test your outcome that it works nicely, go ahead and trace it again with your pen tool so you have nice, perfect paths. Let's go ahead and add some stroke to that. And that is a way better shape, since as you can see, it has way less anchor points. Look how many we have here and how many I just needed in order to create my shape. And this shape now is way easier to further amend till you're happy with the outcome. It's a handy tool in order to use to quickly trace some sketches, check how they work, scale them, clone them, and so on. So do a little draft using this function and then go ahead and create a nice clean outcome. Especially when it comes to more complicated images. So I'm just gonna switch a layer to this illustration here, which is originally created in Photoshop. You will notice like if I'm gonna try to do image trace, firstly I have the black and white option selected from before. The outcome doesn't look as realistic, so I will need to go ahead and adjust my image trace options. Select this time the high fidelity photo, since I want it to be detailed as the initial picture was, and wait for it to create the preview for that picture. It might take a while depending on the picture and how much detail it has to load the high fidelity photo in order to transform it to vector later on. And if I'm gonna click expand now, you see how my vector looks like. So you see how many paths I have, which is kind of impossible to work on them and further edit them. So that is the reason why I tend not to use the image trace in order to create any kind of vector out of complicated images. The other thing is that you can see that the edges are not nice and sharp anymore, and it creates this kind of weird wobbly lines everywhere, which in the industry people do recognize them and they know that you use this tool because you were perhaps lazy to go and trace it manually and make it nice and perfect. I would try to use image trace only for drafts, not for final outcomes. Another thing is accessing the image trace panel using the window panel. So you can click window and then select image trace in order to quickly access this panel. So now it's time to put all this into practice. So let's move on to the practical phase.